Well, I want to show you a little bit of the interior, how to drive the thing, which is pretty simple. It has a 4-speed transmission, standard 4-speed. First, second, third, fourth. Now first, second, third, and fourth are all synchro mesh, so it shifts smoothly with no need to double clutch. Reverses over and up, and so that's a standard shift transmission. It's very easy and standard to drive. This is the handbrake. I never use the handbrake because it doesn't work very well. If you're on a little bit of a slope, it tends to roll with just the handbrake, so I put it in park by putting it in first gear. First gear if it's level or on a down slope. So if it tries to creep, that the engine the engine compression is operating in the right direction. If it's on a back slope, I park it in reverse. So if it tries to creep, the engine compression is working properly to hold it. It has very tight compression in this engine, and it never rolls, even on a very steep slope. I learned that because one time I had it parked on a steep slope, rear slope, and I put it in first gear, and it would tend to creep down because the engine is turning backwards, and I guess the compression doesn't work as well. So when I park it on a back slope, I put it in reverse. If it's level or on a front-facing slope, I put it in first gear for parking purposes. Now this thing down here is the cruise control, or the throttle control. If you're going down the highway and tired of keeping your foot on there, you just set that where you want, and that will keep you at a constant speed. The only drawback is the brake. Nothing will release it except to go down and do that. So I use that quite often when I'm on the highway traveling, and it works very well. Now these two knobs are the 4-wheel drive control knobs. The yellow knob is a push down action that puts it in 4-wheel drive. So if you it was not in it was in low range, so that wouldn't work. So if you have this in high range and you push that down, now that's in 4-wheel drive. Now 4-wheel drive like this means that one rear wheel and one front wheel are turning as controlled by the differentials in the front and the back. So you have one front and one rear turning, and that changes depending on the pressure on the wheels. If you want to take it out of 4-wheel drive, you pull it this lever back, and you notice it pops up. So that puts it back into standard 2-wheel drive. Now the red lever is the low range lever. If you pull it back like that, you're in low range, which is a much slower speed at the same RPMs. Plus, it locks the rear axle, so you've got locking rear axle. So the rear wheels turn at a fixed rate, the same, and one wheel in the front, either left or right, depending on the differential, is turning. So in low range, you actually have 3-wheel drive, one front and 2 locked in the rear. You want to take it out of low range, you just push that forward. And I always come to a stop. I'm not sure what the rule is, but the engine can be running, but I pull to a full stop before I put it in 4-wheel drive or low range. It's very easy to drive. This is the hazard switch. It works. This is the light switch. Since this is a former military thing, you've got all kinds of combinations of lights. You've got front on and back off, or back on and front off. Or if you want just the standard headlights on, you go 1, 2, 3 over here, and that turns everything on in a standard way. These others, I have checked them out, and they're different combinations of front and back. So when the military is going in convoy, if they don't want headlights on and taillights or vice versa, they can switch to different combinations there. So that's the headlights. This is a little infrared switch for, it wasn't working when I got it. And so that's how you drive the car. Well, it starts and runs just like a standard car. Usually when it's cold, here's the choke. When it's cold, I pull out the choke, and it starts right up. Just blinker switches, left, right. The horn is here. These are the wiper blades. This is the heater switch. This is the reset on the trip meter. You turn that. You've got your radiator water temperature, your fuel gauge, and this is the oil temperature. Then of course, since this is a European car, the speed indicators in kilometers per hour, but here are the little numbers down here are miles per hour. This is the total miles or kilometers on it, and a kilometer trip meter. When you put it on high beam, there's a high beam indicator here, oil pressure light here. If it's off, this is the this shows that the charging system's not working. So just very standard. This is a little better view of the instrument panel. Here's the turn signal. Turn left, turn right. Horn. If the key's on, horn will work. Let's turn the key off. Like I said, here's the temperature gauge for the engine. Here's the fuel gauge. This is the oil temperature gauge, which is not hooked up right now. The military was quite concerned about oil temperature, but I don't care about oil temperature, as long as I got oil pressure. Over here is the oil pressure light, the high beam light, and the cold start light. This is the odometer, 57,000 kilometers, which is only about 30,000 miles. And this is the trip meter. I use the trip meter to tell me how much range I have, because the fuel indicator only works with one tank. There's a left tank and a right tank, and so I run the one tank out, and when I switch the other tank, then the fuel indicator shows how much fuel's in that. And this thing gets about 12 miles to gallon. So I got two 12-gallon tanks, so I have about a 300-mile range, which is quite phenomenal. So this is a indicator. Now, this thing is a 1982, and it only has 57,000 kilometers, which is 30,000 miles, because these military trucks, I believe, were just sitting out in a field full of tanks and trucks and maintained, but never went anyplace to speak of. So I've put about 10,000 kilometers on this since I've had it for a few years, but these things are low mileage if you get a military thing that's been sitting in the yard, and it travels around 65 miles an hour on the flat, sometimes 70 if you don't have a headwind. And if you go uphill, though, the 85 horsepower engine will only pull you up the hill so fast, and sometimes I have to shift down into third gear to go up a long grade and the truck's past me, but that's all right. I'm in no hurry to go anyplace.